Could we build incredible cities that act like giant sponges and save thousands of lives, all by just copying what nature does already? Let's say that it rains a lot, and you live in a city that's covered in concrete streets and buildings and other hard surfaces where all that rainwater has nowhere to go. So instead of seeping into the ground like it would in a forest or a grassland, it just kind of flows, which means it can easily overwhelm city drain systems and cause flooding. From just small annoying floods that make getting to work a little bit harder, all the way to huge floods that cost millions, or even billions of dollars in damages. Since 1995, flooding has killed more than 157,000 people. We're gonna be facing a lot more extreme weather events in the future, including more of that flooding, which is actually something we got a sneak peek of this year, with floods across Pakistan. Monsoon rains have caused devastating floods in Pakistan, leaving millions homeless, destroying buildings, bridges and roads, and leaving vast swathes of the country underwater. Now, combine that with the fact that by 2050 the world's population living in cities is expected to almost double, we've got to figure something out. So, what if we look to nature for the solution? Instead of fighting against Mother Nature with unnatural solutions, what if we could just work with it? And what if I told you there's an idea that does just that, and it's called sponge cities? Here's how they work. Sponge cities use a lot of green architecture principles to create spaces that are designed to absorb water just like a sponge. To do this, they use things like porous pavements and roads, tree planting, roofs are covered in plants and soil that retain water, huge green spaces filled with interconnected waterways, channels, and ponds, and also areas that act like things like parks when it's dry, but wetlands when rivers just need a little bit of extra space to overflow. The system passively absorbs flood water with its sponge-like structure. And when this is combined with better grey infrastructure drain systems, you can create cities that can handle almost 4 times the amount of rainwater than normal cities are able to. And they can reduce flooding by around 50%. But it also comes with a heap of other benefits. The water that's absorbed is also passively cleaned, and can be slowly collected and stored away for use by the cities. Biodiversity is also increased, with whole ecosystems flourishing within cities alongside the human wildlife that already lives there. And it can also have a massive impact on what's called the heat island effect, which is where cities generally get really hot, because that same infrastructure that can't absorb water turns out to be really good at absorbing heat. So the extra plants and green surfaces in a sponge city can keep cities cooler. And then on top of all of that, there's also the huge impact that more green spaces have on improving mental health and just overall well-being. China already has 30 sponge city projects that it's working on right now, that aims to be completed by 2030, that'll soak up and reuse 70% of urban rainfall. And on the other side of the world, there are places like Rummelsburg in East Berlin, which is an actual large-scale example of a sponge city that has things like green roofs. And instead of storm sewer systems, they have these green channels called swales that let rainwater actually get into the ground. And now places like the US and Indonesia are looking to adopt these ideas as well. And it's not surprising all of these places want to give it a try. So it seems to me like a win-win all around. So, what's the catch? Well, to create a sponge city either from scratch or retrofitting an existing city, you've got to commit like 100%, because it relies on all of these different systems of green buildings and green spaces. So to make all of the systems work together properly, you first need proper commitment to investing that massive amount of money. And then you need a bunch of different government units to collaborate properly, which you can probably guess isn't the easiest thing to achieve. But even if these projects are expensive, they are gonna prevent bad stuff from happening that can be even more expensive, and even deadly. So sponge cities show us that we've still got a lot to learn about how we create our urban spaces. And it shows that nature might have the solutions that we are looking for, even for problems we didn't know we could solve. But for a lot of solutions, we've got to commit fully to actually see the results, which is a great lesson. So, let's just build as many of them as possible.